The night settles around you with a hush, as though the world itself leans in closer. You feel as though you're standing on the slope of a mountain so tall its peak cuts into the stars. The air is cool, laced with drifting wisps of cloud, and each step you take sinks into the hush of Olympus. You imagine marble pillars glowing faintly in moonlight, the faint scent of pine and wild thyme rising from below. Somewhere in the shadows, you hear the lazy hum of cicadas, though let's be honest, if you were actually standing this high up, the bugs would have passed out long ago. This is the place the ancient Greeks believed the gods called home. A realm where thunder could spark from a raised eyebrow, where feasts never ran out of wine, and where mortals like you were mostly just background characters in the divine drama. You probably wouldn't survive this, but don't worry, you're here just to listen, not to be smited. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and the local time. I love seeing where these stories drift off to, from midnight in London to a lazy afternoon in Manila. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander further, and the marble beneath your feet seems to melt into clouds. The halls of Olympus don't roar with music right now, instead, they are hushed, as though even the gods sleep. But you sense something older than sleep, older than Olympus itself. For the stories we're heading into tonight don't begin here, not with Zeus, not with his lightning bolts, not even with Cronus before him. They begin with nothing. Nothing but a chasm. The Greeks had a word for it, chaos. And don't picture the chaos of your messy laundry pile or your browser with 47 tabs open. This was the primordial kind, the raw absence of shape. Imagine staring into fog and realizing the fog has no edges, no floor, no ceiling. You reach out, and there is nothing. The universe hasn't been arranged yet, and you float in it, listening to a silence deeper than silence. From this vast nothingness, shapes slowly emerge Gaia, the earth beneath your feet, her body forming mountains and valleys, rivers and fertile soil. She stretches herself wide, patient and enduring. Beside her comes Uranus, the sky arched above, a dome glittering with stars. They are opposites but bound tightly together. Oddly enough, some ancient sources also say that love itself, Eros, sprang up right out of chaos, as if even the void knew that stories need attraction, need longing. Scholars still argue whether Eros in those earliest texts was the same winged figure with the arrows you see on Valentine's Day, or whether he was more of a cosmic glue, binding sky and earth into harmony. Either way, the Greeks believed even the emptiness wasn't empty for long. Here's a quirky detail, in some versions, Night Nyx also comes right out of chaos, trailing her black wings across the forming cosmos. She is described as so beautiful and terrifying that even Zeus, king of the gods, later hesitated to cross her. Imagine being so intense that the god of thunder says, yeah, nope, not messing with that. As you drift through this early world, you sense how the myths overlap like shifting dreams. Each retelling was a little different, passed through centuries of oral tradition before Hesiod wrote them down in his Theogony, a sort of family tree for the gods. That's a historical fact. Around the 8th century BCE, Hesiod compiled these tales into poetry, giving us one of the earliest written accounts of Greek cosmogony. Without him, the details might have dissolved into smoke. But right now, you're still in that primordial quiet. Earth and sky cling to each other, and between them life begins to sprout. The first children of Gaia and Uranus are strange, colossal beings, the Titans, the Cyclopes with their single glowing eye, and the Centimanes with their 100 hands and 50 heads. Yeah, those ones were probably a nightmare to babysit. You can almost hear them shifting restlessly in the shadows, waiting for their turn in the stories to come. For now, you linger in the silence, the hum of potential all around you. You sense that this is only the beginning, the raw fabric of myth, stitched from darkness into form. The clouds of Olympus drift apart, and you step forward, toward the tale of Gaia and Uranus, the lovers, the parents, and the first to taste the bitterness of betrayal. You step into a dreamlike garden where the earth feels alive beneath your feet. It isn't just soil and stone, it's Gaia herself, the great Earth Mother. She stretches out endlessly, her body becoming rolling hills, the curve of valleys, and the firmness of mountains. You sense her patience, her endless endurance, like the steady pulse of a heartbeat under your toes. Above, Uranus drapes himself as the starry sky, vast and glittering, wrapping Gaia in a dome of light. He is her partner, her counterpart, the Sky Father. Together, they form the first great union in Greek myth, a bond that births entire generations of beings. You can almost imagine them whispering across the horizon, earth calling upward, sky bending downward. The children that come from this union are far from ordinary. First, the Titans, 12 mighty beings with names that will echo through the stories to come. Oceanus, who flows as the endless river around the world, Hyperion, tied to the sun's blazing course, Themis, embodiment of divine law and order. Each titan embodies a piece of the cosmos, a force too vast for any mortal to comprehend. Then come the Cyclopes, those one-eyed giants whose gaze is as sharp as fire. Later myths say they forge thunderbolts, but right now they're just newborns, tucked into the folds of Gaia's body. And finally, the Centimanes, the 100-handed ones, each with 50 heads. It's almost funny, you try to picture them squeezing through the door of a nursery, arms flailing in every direction. No wonder Uranus looks uneasy. Here's where things turn dark. Uranus, the Sky Father, fears his children. He sees their size, their power, their potential, and he dreads being overthrown. So he does the unthinkable, he forces them back inside Gaia, cramming them into her depths, into the earth itself. Imagine trying to swallow your own offspring, or press them into your ribs like unwanted memories. Gaia groans with pain, her body stretching, splitting. The earth itself becomes a prison. And you standing there, a quiet witness, feel the tension in the air. The harmony of sky and earth is cracking. Gaia, who endures everything, decides she will endure no more. In her anger and sorrow, she shapes something sharp, a sickle carved of flint. She calls to her children for help. But most shrink away from the task, too afraid of Uranus' power. Only Cronus, the youngest Titan, steps forward. He is ambitious, patient, and more than a little ruthless. One night, Uranus descends to Gaia, as he always does, to cover her with the starry sky. But Cronus waits in the shadows, the sickle in hand. When Uranus stretches low, Cronus strikes, severing his father's power in a single stroke. The stars shiver, the sky recoils, and Uranus' blood rains down onto the earth. Now here's a quirky detail, according to the myths, the drops of blood that fell onto Gaia gave birth to even more beings. From them sprang the Erinyes, the Furies, vengeful spirits with serpents for hair, chasing down those guilty of crimes against kin. The giants also rose from that blood, massive figures of brute force. And from the foam of the severed parts cast into the sea, Aphrodite would later be born, goddess of love and beauty. Out of violence, out of something gruesome, comes desire and charm. That's mythology for you. Scholars still argue whether this castration myth is purely symbolic, a story about the separation of sky and earth to make space for creation, or whether it reflects actual ritual practices from the deep prehistory of Greece. Was Cronus just a metaphor for agricultural cycles, cutting the sky away from the soil so crops could grow? No one agrees, and maybe that's part of the beauty, it leaves space for your imagination to wander. Meanwhile, Uranus retreats, humiliated, his power broken. He no longer rules as father of the cosmos. Instead, Cronus rises as leader among the Titans. A new age begins, one not of primordial chaos, but of Titan rule. Yet the cycle of fear is not finished, because Cronus has inherited more than power, he's inherited the same dread that once poisoned his father. You notice how quiet the stars above have grown. The dome of Uranus has pulled away, leaving the night open, wide, and exposed. The earth exhales in relief, but the balance feels fragile, as though every victory comes with its own curse. The path ahead is shadowed, leading you toward Cronus' reign, the uneasy rule of the Titans, where suspicion lurks behind every triumph. The earth feels heavy beneath your feet now, as though carrying the memory of a wound. You follow the faint shimmer of starlight until you find yourself at the edge of a vast plain where the Titans gather. They are enormous, their voices rolling like thunder, their forms towering against the night. At the center stands Cronus, the sickle still faintly glinting in his hand. His expression is calm, almost serene, but beneath it you sense the sharp edge of paranoia. Cronus has taken the throne, crowned not with jewels but with the silence of his father's absence. He rules alongside his sister wife, Rhea, patient, steady, and far gentler than her brother. Around them, the other Titans take their places, each shaping the world in their own way. Hyperion steers the sun across the sky, Selene glides as the moon, and Oceanus circles everything with his boundless waters. It seems, for a moment, that the cosmos has settled into order. But peace in mythology never lasts long. Cronus hears a whisper, a prophecy. Just as he overthrew Uranus, one of his own children will one day overthrow him. It's a cosmic game of hot potato, and nobody wants to be the one holding destiny when the music stops. The fear seeps into him, a gnawing shadow he can't shake. So he chooses a solution both horrifying and strangely practical. Every time Rhea gives birth, Cronus swallows the newborn whole. One after another, his children vanish down his throat, tucked away in his belly like swallowed stars. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, all devoured before they can cry their first word. Rhea, watching in horror, feels her heart crack each time. Here's an odd detail, in some versions, Cronus doesn't just swallow them, he keeps them alive inside his stomach, their divine essence undigested, waiting. Imagine carrying an entire family dinner inside you, and not in the usual way. It's almost darkly comic, like he's turned himself into a cosmic storage locker. Rhea, weary of loss, finally decides enough is enough. When she prepares to deliver her next child, she plots with Gaia. She hides away to give birth in secret, cradling a son destined for more than a dark prison in his father's gut. On the island of Crete, in a cave nestled between jagged rocks, she brings Zeus into the world. His cries are fierce, but the sound is quickly drowned out by the Cuorites, warriors who clash their shields and shout, masking the infant's voice from Cronus. Meanwhile, Rhea offers Cronus a decoy, a swaddled stone. Without a second thought, Cronus swallows it, satisfied that the prophecy has been silenced. The irony is thick, the most paranoid being in existence is also the easiest to trick. Scholars still argue whether Cronus' habit of swallowing his children symbolizes something more, perhaps the cycle of time consuming all things, or the seasonal disappearance of crops before their rebirth. Cronus, after all, is often associated with time itself, devouring moments as he devours his heirs. Was the myth a metaphor for the inescapable nature of decay? Or was it simply a tale to warn about what happens when you let fear rule you? The cave where Zeus grows is filled with soft, humming echoes. You picture him nurtured by the goat Amalthea, drinking her milk, and playing under the protective watch of nymphs. His laughter grows stronger, his limbs more powerful. Each day he carries not just his own fate, but the weight of his swallowed siblings. Someday, he will come for them. And Cronus? He walks the world as a king haunted by his own hunger. Even as he commands the Titans, shaping rivers and seasons, his belly is filled with muffled voices, his own children pressing against him from within, waiting for their release. It's a chilling balance, on the surface, a world ordered by Titans, underneath, a stomach carrying a secret rebellion. And you, drifting beside them, can almost hear the faint heartbeat of the child growing in secret, the one who will change everything. The plane of the Titans fades behind you, shadows curling at the edges of your vision. Ahead lies a storm, a rising power hidden on Crete, a thunder that hasn't yet cracked the sky. The reign of Cronus is nearing its twilight, and Zeus, small but growing, waits for his moment to strike. You wander deeper into the story, and the ground beneath you seems to tremble, not with footsteps, but with the weight of inevitability. The age of Titans stretches on, but Cronus' reign feels fragile, as though one good gust of wind might topple it. He walks proudly among his siblings, pretending to rule with confidence, but you can sense the doubt gnawing at him like a slow worm burrowing through wood. Far away, on the island of Crete, the child he thought he'd swallowed is growing strong. Zeus no longer cries in the cradle, now he roams among cliffs and caves, raised in secrecy by nymphs and fed by the goat Amalthea. Legend says her horns poured out ambrosia and nectar, an endless feast for the boy. Later, one of those horns would become the cornucopia, the horn of plenty, a symbol still carved on Thanksgiving tables today. A historical fact for you, the cornucopia shows up not just in Greek art but also in Roman festivals, a sign of how myths travel and reshape themselves across cultures. Here's a quirky little detail: Zeus wasn't raised quietly, at least not according to some storytellers. The Cuorites, those armored dancers, clashed their shields together and stomped their feet to mask his cries, so Cronus wouldn't hear him. So picture this, a baby wailing in a cave, while a bunch of warriors do synchronized choreography like some ancient version of a rave. Not exactly your typical lullaby. Meanwhile, Cronus begins to notice something. His body feels strange, heavy in a way that even a Titan shouldn't. The swallowed stone lies cold in his stomach, and around it, the muffled presence of his other children churns. Though he pretends not to notice, there are nights when he swears he hears a faint voice from within, like a whisper in his ribs. His paranoia grows sharper. Zeus, growing into youth, learns not only strength but cunning. Guided by Gaia, he plots against his father. When the time comes, Rhea slips into Cronus' halls with her grown son at her side. The trick begins with something deceptively simple, a drink. Some say it was a potion mixed with herbs, others that it was emetic magic, forcing Cronus to retch. Either way, Cronus raises the cup, takes it down, and suddenly everything he has swallowed begins to surge upward. One by one, the gods spill out. Hestia first, then Demeter, then Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, each reborn, still alive after all that time, their divine forms shining brighter for having been hidden. Imagine the shock on Cronus' face, the prophecy he thought he had beaten now staring back at him in 5 pairs of furious eyes. Now, Zeus isn't just the last child, he's the leader. The siblings unite, each carrying their own scars of betrayal. Together, they declare war on Cronus and the Titans. This is the Titanomachy, the great war between gods and their predecessors. Scholars still argue whether the Titanomachy was purely a myth or whether it echoes some memory of real cultural conflict, perhaps the transition between older Earth-based religions and the rise of Olympian worship. Was it just a story about cosmic succession, or a political metaphor? Either way, it's one of the grand pivot points of Greek mythology, the end of one era and the rise of another. The war is brutal. On one side stand Cronus and most of the Titans. On the other, Zeus and his siblings, calling themselves the Olympians. The battlefield stretches across the world, mountains shaking, seas boiling, the sky split by lightning. The Cyclopes, freed from their prison inside Gaia, repay Zeus by forging weapons, thunderbolts for him, a trident for Poseidon, and a helm of invisibility for Hades. The Centimanes, the hundred-handed ones, hurl rocks like meteors, their voices booming across the plains. Here's another odd image for you. The Cyclopes supposedly hammered Zeus' thunderbolts on anvils so loud they shook the underworld. It's almost funny to think of gods sneaking into battle with brand new gear, like teenagers showing off shiny sneakers on the first day of school, except in this case, the sneakers are planet-cracking weapons. The war lasts 10 years, echoing through myth as the battle that shaped the cosmos. Finally, Zeus hurls his thunderbolts in a storm so fierce it scorches the Titans. Cronus and his allies are cast down, bound, and imprisoned in Tartarus, the abyss beneath even the underworld. The Centimanes stand as their eternal guards, a punishment fittingly terrifying. And so, the age of the Titans ends. The Olympians rise, carving out their thrones on Mount Olympus. Zeus, triumphant, becomes king, his siblings ruling alongside him. The prophecy has come true not because it was stopped, but because it was fulfilled. Cronus, for all his fear, only made it inevitable. The ground beneath you softens, the tremors fading into calm. Above you, the clouds part, and you see Olympus glowing anew, its halls no longer silent. Laughter drifts faintly on the wind, mingling with the crackle of distant lightning. The reign of Zeus has begun. But already, a new story is stirring, one not of kings, but of rebels. A Titan who wasn't content to simply obey. You feel the spark of fire in the distance, waiting to be stolen. The air around you sharpens with the scent of smoke, though no fire burns yet. You follow a faint glow, and the path bends into a cavern lit by sparks that leap like restless thoughts. Here stands Prometheus, the Titan whose name means forethought. Unlike his fellow Titans, he does not brood in Tartarus. He sided with Zeus in the war, and for that loyalty, he was spared. But his loyalty is complicated, tethered less to the gods and more to humankind. You see him standing tall, eyes bright with something other than fear. Prometheus watches mortals stumble in the darkness, cold and hungry, their nights long and helpless. The Olympians ignore them. What are humans but little toys, fragile and fleeting? Yet Prometheus sees potential. He sees that humans could rise, given just a spark. And so, he steals it. Some say he crept into Hephaestus' forge, snatching a glowing ember. Others say he plucked it straight from the sun's chariot. Either way, he hides it in a fennel stalk, a curious detail, by the way, because fennel stems are hollow and burn slowly, making them a surprisingly practical ancient matchstick. Quirky, right? A Titan saving humanity with what basically amounts to a cosmic kitchen utensil. Prometheus descends from Olympus, bringing fire to mortals. You imagine them huddling around the first flames, eyes wide, shadows dancing on stone walls. They cook, they forge, they dream. With fire, they are no longer helpless animals, they are creators. Zeus, however, is not amused. Fire, to him, is divine property. To gift it to mortals is to upset the hierarchy. Mortals might become too bold, too clever, too hard to control. And Zeus, let's be honest, has never liked sharing. So Zeus punishes Prometheus with a cruelty almost artistic. He chains the Titan to a jagged cliff, high in the Caucasus Mountains. Each day, an eagle swoops down, sharp beak, wide wings, eyes like molten gold, and tears into Prometheus' liver. Each night, his flesh heals again. Immortality ensures the torment never ends. A cycle of pain, over and over, with no escape. Here's a historical fact: the myth of Prometheus fascinated later thinkers, especially during the Enlightenment. He became a symbol of human progress, of rebellion against divine authority. Even Mary Shelley, when writing Frankenstein in the 19th century, subtitled her book The Modern Prometheus, linking the creation of life with the theft of forbidden fire. His story transcended time, just like the spark he gave us. Scholars still argue whether Prometheus represents rebellion against tyranny or the very essence of human curiosity, the kind that pushes us to take risks, to steal fire even when it burns. Was he a hero punished unfairly, or a trickster who upset the balance? Each retelling shades him differently. Meanwhile, humanity thrives. Around their fires, stories are born. You imagine the first songs, the first laughter, the first sense of safety as shadows retreat. Prometheus' suffering becomes their light, his pain the cost of their progress. And the eagle, imagine it for a moment, beating its wings in slow rhythm, talons sinking into stone before lunging forward again. Day after day, year after year. It's almost absurd how committed Zeus is to making a point. You can't help but smirk at the pettiness of gods. But Prometheus endures. Bound, bleeding, but unbroken. His eyes fixed not on Olympus, but on the fires flickering in mortal homes far below. He knows it was worth it. As you drift away from the cliff, the chains fade into mist. Yet something lingers, the warmth of firelight against your skin, the reminder that even the smallest ember can change the course of history. The path ahead grows quieter, dimmer. Another figure waits, not with fire, but with a gift wrapped in curiosity, a jar that should never have been opened. The firelight behind you fades, replaced by the soft gleam of pottery. You wander into a still chamber where a single jar, massive, heavy, sealed tight, rests on a pedestal. At first it looks harmless, like something you'd use to store olives or wine. But you know better. You've stepped into the story of Pandora. The gods, still simmering over Prometheus' defiance, decide to balance the scales. If mortals are going to have fire, they'll also inherit something darker. Zeus commands the creation of the first woman. Hephaestus, the smith, molds her out of clay. Athena breathes into her the gift of wisdom, Aphrodite brushes her with beauty, Hermes adds persuasion and trickery. Each god gives something: grace, charm, talent, but also mischief. When she opens her eyes for the first time, she is dazzling. They name her Pandora, all gifted. She's sent to live among humans, carrying with her that jar. And here's where a quirky little detail comes in. In the original Greek, it wasn't a box at all, it was a pithos, a large jar, the kind used to store grain or oil. The famous Pandora's box is a Renaissance mistranslation that stuck. Funny how one slip of a word reshaped centuries of imagination. At first, Pandora lives quietly. The jar stays sealed, a mystery in her home. But curiosity hums inside her, soft as a heartbeat. Why would the gods give her something if it was never meant to be touched? Day after day, she glances at it. Her fingers itch. The silence around it grows heavier. Until one moment, maybe a blink of distraction, maybe a surge of boldness, she opens it. Out rushes everything. Sickness, greed, envy, despair. Jealousy, hunger, rage. Each spills into the world like black smoke, curling into villages, into homes, into the hearts of mortals. The air grows heavy. The earth itself seems to sag. You imagine people coughing, fighting, weeping all at once, as though humanity's innocence has been shattered in a single breath. Pandora slams the lid closed, heart pounding. She trembles, realizing what she has unleashed. The jar is nearly empty now, but not completely. From the bottom, one final thing clings. Soft, fragile, almost too faint to notice, hope. It stays inside, glowing faintly in the dark. Was it trapped, meant to be withheld? Or was it preserved, a gift left behind to comfort humanity in its suffering? Scholars still argue whether hope in this myth was meant as consolation or as yet another cruel trick. Is hope a blessing that keeps people going, or a torment that keeps them chasing what they'll never reach? The debate has never ended. Pandora herself is left shaken. She was created as a punishment, but she also becomes the mother of a new human generation. From her, life continues, carrying both the darkness and the faint glow of hope. Here's a historical fact: the story of Pandora was often compared to the biblical tale of Eve. Both are the first woman, both blamed for bringing suffering into the world. But unlike Eve, Pandora wasn't tempted by a serpent, just her own curiosity. In some ways, she is less a sinner and more a mirror of us all, unable to resist the mystery of a seal jar. You pause here, looking at the jar's faint glow. The air is thick with shadows, but that single shimmer of hope remains. You wonder if maybe that's enough. The scene shifts again, the jar dissolving into mist. You hear the slow crunch of footsteps on dry soil, a faint chill creeping into the air. Ahead lies another woman whose story will change the seasons themselves, a daughter caught between two worlds, bound by hunger and love. Persephone is waiting. You feel the ground cool beneath your feet, the air carrying the scent of damp earth and pomegranate seeds. The world around you changes, bright fields of wheat and poppies fade into dim caverns where shadows coil. You've stepped into the story of Persephone, the girl whose footsteps split the year in two. She begins in sunlight. Persephone, daughter of Demeter, runs through meadows, laughter spilling behind her like petals. She is radiant, almost glowing, the kind of presence that makes flowers lean toward her. Mortals would later say she was the spirit of spring itself. And you can see why everything around her blooms when she touches it. But the earth shifts under her feet. The ground cracks, and from the darkness below, a chariot bursts forth. Its driver is Hades, lord of the underworld. His black horse's stamp sparks from the soil as he seizes Persephone, lifting her into his shadowy realm. The meadow closes behind them, flowers withering where her hands once grazed. It sounds sudden, almost like a kidnapping, but myths often balance between terror and tenderness. Some say Persephone was tricked, others suggest she felt a strange pull toward Hades, as though some part of her already belonged in the dark. Scholars still argue whether her descent was pure abduction or an allegory for marriage in ancient Greece, where daughters left their mothers' homes and vanished into the households of men. Demeter, her mother, is devastated. She searches the earth endlessly, her grief so heavy it halts the cycle of growth. Crops wither, rivers dry, animals starve. The world turns barren, as though the earth itself mourns with her. That's a historical fact tucked into myth. Ancient Greeks explained the seasons through this story. When Persephone is gone, Demeter's sorrow creates winter. When she returns, spring bursts forth again. Meanwhile, Persephone adjusts to life below. The underworld isn't just shadows, it has palaces of obsidian, rivers glowing faintly in the dark, and meadows of ghostly asphodel. Hades, often imagined as cruel, shows her a quieter kind of devotion. He offers her a throne beside his own. The myth doesn't always paint him as a villain, but as a king longing for companionship. It's complicated, the way myths often are. And then, the fruit. Hades offers Persephone pomegranate seeds. She eats them, 6, in some tellings, though the number changes. A quirky detail, pomegranates were associated with fertility and the cycle of life and death in many cultures. Their blood-red seeds look like jewels, tempting, impossible to forget once tasted. By eating them, Persephone is bound to the underworld. Zeus finally intervenes, pressured by Demeter's despair and the dying world. A compromise is struck. Persephone will split her time. For part of the year, she will live with Hades below, for the rest, she will return to her mother above. And so the cycle begins, winter's absence, spring's return. You picture her now, walking between worlds. In spring, she rises from shadow, bringing warmth and blossoms. In autumn, she descends again, carrying seeds of fire and frost in her hands. She is both maiden and queen, sunlight and shadow. Here's something odd, in certain versions of the Eleusinian Mysteries, ancient Greek rituals devoted to Demeter and Persephone, participants reenacted her descent and return as a sacred drama. It wasn't just a story, it was a rite of passage, a promise of life after death. Imagine standing in torchlight with thousands of others, whispering her name, believing that her cycle echoed your own. As you walk through this myth, you feel the tug between mother and daughter, earth and underworld, loss and renewal. Persephone embodies the balance of opposites, the reminder that even in endings, there are beginnings waiting. The cavern softens into echoes of music, strings, gentle at first, then aching. A lyre calls from the shadows, and with it comes the story of another descent into the underworld. This time, not for seasons, but for love. Orpheus is waiting with his song. The melody lingers, fragile as spider silk, each note carrying you deeper into shadow. You follow the sound until the world narrows to a single figure, Orpheus, seated at the edge of the underworld, his lyre glowing faintly in the gloom. His fingers move as if they aren't plucking strings but weaving light into the air. You already know, you can feel it in your chest, that this isn't just music. This is grief turned into sound. Orpheus's wife, Eurydice, is gone. She died on their wedding day, bitten by a snake as she danced, joy collapsing into silence. He couldn't bear it. So here he sits, ready to walk into the land of the dead armed with nothing but his song. And somehow, it works. The underworld is usually unyielding, but Orpheus's music softens even the hardest edges. Cerberus, the three-headed hound, lowers all 6 ears, lulled by the melody. The Furies, normally shrieking for vengeance, weep into their hands. Even Hades and Persephone pause, listening as if the song speaks directly to the hollows in their own hearts. You get the sense that this is a rare moment. Mortals almost never sway the rulers of the dead. Here's your historical fact. In ancient Greek culture, Orpheus became the symbol of music's transcendent power. His mythical ability to charm animals, trees, and even stones reflected the very real reverence Greeks had for music as something divine, almost magical. Hades relents. He tells Orpheus he may take Eurydice back, but on one condition: he must not look back at her until they both stand in the light of the living world. It seems simple, doesn't it? Just keep walking forward. But of course, humans are complicated, and rules like this never come without tension. You picture it, Orpheus leading the way, his heart hammering as he hears her footsteps behind him. The path is steep, the air heavy. Shadows cling, whispering doubts. Is she really there? What if the gods tricked him? Each step must feel like an eternity. And you can feel his desperation build, the need to look, to confirm, to see her face one more time. Here's an odd detail: some versions of the myth suggest Eurydice never actually speaks during this journey. She's silent, almost ghost-like, which makes Orpheus's longing even sharper. He's walking toward the surface with nothing but faith, no words to reassure him. And then, the moment. At the very edge of daylight, Orpheus falters. He turns. Maybe out of love, maybe out of doubt, maybe because silence was too much to bear. And in that instant, Eurydice is pulled back into shadow, vanishing with a final, soundless gesture. He reaches out, but his hand closes on empty air. Scholars still argue whether this story is a warning about trust, or simply the cruel beauty of human weakness, that love, even at its strongest, bends under the weight of uncertainty. Orpheus tries to return. He pleads, sings, begs. But this time, the underworld is unmoved. The gates are closed. He wanders the earth in grief, refusing all other companionship. His songs change. They no longer charm, they ache. In some tellings, his mourning is so intense it angers others, leading to his eventual death at the hands of jealous followers of Dionysus. And yet, his story lingers, not as tragedy alone, but as proof that art itself is immortal. Orpheus's song survives where his love does not. That's the paradox you carry with you: the underworld takes Eurydice, but the world of the living gains music eternal. The notes of his lyre fade, dissolving into silence around you. For a moment, it's as though your breath itself could break the spell. But then, the silence shifts, trembling like water disturbed by a pebble. From shadowy depths, the sound of trickling springs rises. Clear, cold water runs over stone. You step forward, drawn to the glimmer of a river where a figure bends low, gazing endlessly at his reflection. His name is Narcissus, and his story is about a different kind of entrapment, one that comes not from gods or grief, but from the pull of your own reflection. The river runs smooth as glass, the kind of water that looks almost too perfect to be real. You lean closer, and there he is, Narcissus. His posture is elegant, but still, as though he might snap if the breeze shifted. He stares into the surface with a devotion so complete you almost want to tap him on the shoulder, just to remind him the real world still exists. But he won't turn. He can't. Narcissus was renowned for his beauty, a mortal whose face drew admiration wherever he walked. People adored him, longed for him, and yet he dismissed them all. He was polite in some versions, cruel in others, but always distant, untouchable, like a star you can see but never reach. And then came Nemesis, goddess of retribution. She had a talent for balancing scales, for evening out the arrogance of mortals. When she saw how Narcissus spurned everyone who cared for him, she decided to intervene, not with thunder or swords, but with something subtler. She led him to this pool, and left him there. You can see the moment it happens. Narcissus bends to drink, and instead of water, he sees a face. A perfect face. A face that gazes back with the same hunger. He falls in love, not realizing it's his own reflection. From that moment, he can't move. His whole being is pulled into the surface, every breath tethered to the shimmer of his own image. Here's your historical fact: the word narcissism that psychologists use today, self-obsession, vanity, unhealthy self-focus, comes directly from this myth. What started as a cautionary tale in ancient Greece echoes in modern therapy sessions and textbooks. Oddly enough, there's a quirky twist in one lesser-known version: Narcissus doesn't just stare. He tries to kiss the water, to embrace the figure he sees. But every time he leans in, the surface breaks, scattering the face he loves into ripples. Imagine the endless frustration of wanting closeness but destroying it with every attempt. Some scholars still argue whether Narcissus is meant to represent pure vanity, or whether his tale hides something deeper, a warning about becoming trapped in illusions, about how desire itself can imprison you when you mistake reflection for reality. And of course, his story ends in stillness. Narcissus wastes away, rooted to the spot, until at last his body dissolves and in its place blooms a flower, the narcissus, or daffodil. You can almost see its pale petals bending toward the water, forever mirroring the boy's final pose. It's haunting, yes, but also strangely gentle. Instead of punishment with fire or chains, his transformation is quiet, almost merciful. A life too absorbed in itself becomes something delicate for others to admire. The pool before you ripples once more, as though even now his presence lingers, forever gazing into depths. You straighten, pulling yourself away before you too lose time staring at what isn't really there. The water trickles onward, winding into streams that split the earth like silver veins. You follow them, listening to the sound of rushing waves ahead. The air grows salty, cool, filled with cries of seabirds. The myth shifts once more, carrying you from stagnant pools to endless seas. And there, rising from foam, is the next tale. A goddess is born, not from womb or cradle, but from the very ocean itself. Aphrodite stands before you, shimmering with sea spray, laughter caught in the curve of her mouth. Foam clings to the waves like lace as you step closer to the sea. The horizon glows soft in gold, and from the rolling surf, she rises, Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. She is not born in a cradle, nor carried by mortal hands, but from the foam itself, shimmering like sunlight breaking over water. The sea seems to celebrate her, tossing pearls and shells onto the shore as offerings. Her origin is one of the strangest in all Greek mythology. Some say she sprang fully formed from the sea after Cronus cast the severed parts of Uranus into the waves. Yes, that's right, the universe's most beautiful goddess is technically born out of a very messy celestial crime scene. Scholars still argue whether this origin is meant to highlight the chaotic power of creation or simply to remind us that beauty can bloom from the most unlikely beginnings. Aphrodite steps lightly onto a shell, carried by dolphins in breezes. The hours, the goddesses of the seasons, rush to clothe her in silken robes. Everywhere she walks, flowers open as though they've been waiting for her. You can't help but feel she isn't just a goddess, she's a force. Love isn't always gentle, and beauty isn't always safe, but they're impossible to resist. Here's your historical fact: the cult of Aphrodite was widespread across the Mediterranean, and in Cyprus especially, grand temples were built in her honor. Archaeologists have uncovered altars where worshippers once offered incense, doves, and honey to seek her favor. She wasn't simply a symbol of romance, she was invoked for fertility, prosperity, even political alliances. And then there's her marriage. The gods, wary of chaos, decided Aphrodite needed a husband. Strangely, they paired her with Hephaestus, the god of the forge, brilliant, but scarred and limping. A union of beauty and craftsmanship, yes, but also a mismatch. For Aphrodite's heart was not tethered so easily. Her most famous lover? Ares, god of war. Love and conflict, what a combination. In fact, one quirky story tells how Hephaestus once caught them together. He forged an invisible net, trapping them mid-embrace, then summoned the other gods to laugh at the scene. It's a myth that shows the Greeks weren't above slipping in a little divine gossip to explain the messy overlaps of desire, jealousy, and humiliation. But Aphrodite's stories aren't all scandal. Some paint her as tender, guiding mortals toward companionship. Others show her as vengeful when slighted, punishing those who refuse to honor her beauty. Like Narcissus before her, she embodies the dual edge of attraction, irresistible, but dangerous when ignored or misused. Scholars still debate whether Aphrodite was originally a Greek goddess at all, or whether her worship came from older Eastern traditions like the Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar, who also ruled over love and war. Her mythic DNA seems woven from many cultures, a reminder of how ideas traveled with sailors and traders across the sea. Standing here on the beach, you watch her laughter ripple like sunlight across the water. She is magnetic, dangerous, radiant. The foam gathers around your feet, cool and endless, pulling you into the tide. And in that tide, you feel another story rising. Not of beauty, but of labor. Not of effortless grace, but of endless struggle. The horizon darkens, clouds gathering, and far off you hear the rattle of chains against stone. A titan shifts under his burden. Prometheus is waiting, the one who stole fire for humankind. The tide recedes, leaving you on a barren shore where the sky feels heavier, darker. Ahead, a mountain looms, jagged and cold. At its peak, a figure strains against chains, his body pinned to the rock by divine decree. You recognize him, Prometheus, the titan who defied Zeus. His crime? Compassion. Prometheus had watched humans struggle in the dark, shivering, powerless, scraping existence from the earth. He pitied them. So, one night, he crept into Olympus itself, stole a spark of fire, and carried it down in a hollow reed. Imagine that flame flickering for the first time in mortal hands, chasing away shadows, boiling water, forging tools. Fire wasn't just warmth, it was civilization's seed. Here's your historical fact: archaeologists believe fire control dates back nearly 1,000,000 years. The Greeks, of course, didn't know the timeline, but they sensed instinctively that fire marked the difference between survival and collapse. To them, Prometheus was the great benefactor, the one who gave humanity its most vital gift. But Zeus saw theft. And worse, disobedience. The king of gods wasn't fond of being outsmarted. So he chained Prometheus to this mountain. Each day an eagle descends, tearing into his flesh, devouring his liver. And each night, it grows back, ready for the torment to begin again. You can almost hear the beat of wings above, the cruel rhythm of punishment echoing against the stone. It's gruesome, yes, but also fascinating. A quirky detail, the liver was chosen for a reason. Ancient Greeks believed the liver was the seat of human emotions and vitality. To tear it daily was to unmake his very essence, again and again. Yet Prometheus never breaks. He doesn't scream for mercy. Instead, he endures. Some versions even show him mocking Zeus, holding to the secret knowledge he still carries, prophecies about the future downfall of the gods themselves. There's stubbornness in his silence, a defiance that feels almost more powerful than the fire he gave away. Scholars still argue whether this myth reflects admiration for rebellion or a caution against it. Was Prometheus celebrated as humanity's champion, or feared as a warning about the cost of defying power? Greek playwrights like Aeschylus lean toward the heroic view, portraying him as a martyr who suffered so that mortals could rise. As you stand at the mountain's base, the wind tears at your clothes, cold and sharp. And yet, in the distance, you sense hope. For the story doesn't end with eternal punishment. Later myths tell that Heracles, on his wandering labors, stumbles across Prometheus and frees him with an arrow, slaying the eagle. The Titan is unbound, finally. Freedom through another act of rebellion. You watch the chains rattle loose, just for a moment, imagining the relief in his shoulders. A story of theft, of pain, of endurance, but also of liberation. The mountain fades around you, the sky softening once again. You hear another clink of metal, but this time not chains, tools. Hammer against anvil. Sparks flying in the dark, not from stolen fire, but from the forge of the god who owned it. Hephaestus waits, the divine smith, shaping thunderbolts for Zeus and armor for heroes. His workshop glows ahead, and with it comes the hum of creation itself. The mountain dissolves, leaving you in a cavern lit by orange glow. The air hums with heat, thick with the smell of metal and smoke. Each strike of hammer on anvil rings like thunder rolling underground. Sparks leap into the shadows and vanish. At the center of it all stands Hephaestus, the god-smith. He doesn't look like the other gods you've met. His back is bent, his gait uneven, one leg dragging slightly behind the other. Hephaestus was born imperfect, lame, cast from Olympus by Hera in one version, by Zeus in another. Either way, the fall scarred him, left him limping forever. And yet, here in his forge, he is unmatched. You watch him work, and it's mesmerizing. His arms are strong, steady, guiding molten bronze as if the metal itself respects him. His hammer doesn't just shape, it creates. Shields that shimmer with constellations, armor etched with stories, weapons that hum with divine power. Here's your historical fact. The Greeks revered smiths and craftsmen as keepers of civilization. Without bronze and iron, their cities, armies, and tools could not exist. To them, Hephaestus wasn't just a god of fire, he embodied technology itself. Still, his life wasn't easy. The other gods mocked him for his limp. Even his marriage was a strange bargain. He was given Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, as a wife. You already know how that turned out, with her secret trysts with Ares. And yet, in some versions, Hephaestus shrugs off the betrayal, burying himself in his work. Perhaps that's why he's so fascinating. Unlike the shining, arrogant gods, he feels more human, wounded, mocked, but quietly unstoppable. There's a quirky detail in one myth. When Hera threw him from Olympus as a baby, he landed in the sea and was raised by the sea goddesses Thetis and Eurynomy. They kept him hidden in a cave for 9 years, during which he built mechanical wonders, golden thrones, jeweled cups, even living maidens of bronze to assist him. Imagine a lonely child, tinkering endlessly until his hands could make miracles. Scholars still argue whether Hephaestus's lameness was seen as shameful or symbolic. Was it meant as a punishment for divine imperfection, or as proof that even weakness can forge strength? His myths refuse to give one neat answer. The glow of his forge brightens as he lifts a nearly finished shield. It gleams with strange patterns, circles within circles, rivers carved in gold, armies marching across its surface. This is the shield of Achilles, one of his greatest creations. Homer described it in the Iliad with obsessive detail, as though the shield itself were a miniature cosmos. You sense the weight of it in your chest. Hephaestus doesn't just shape metal, he shapes stories, whole worlds hammered into bronze. That's his gift, not beauty of body, but beauty of craft. The cavern hums with the rhythm of his hammer, steady, endless. You step back, letting the sparks fade into dark. And as they dim, the air cools, silence replacing the ringing steel. Ahead lies another silence, but of a different kind, the silence of chains, of stillness, of endurance stretched beyond reason. You feel the weight before you see him, a giant bound, his face carved with sorrow. Atlas waits, shoulders bowed, carrying the sky itself. The forge's glow fades, replaced by a horizon that stretches forever. The air here is vast, thin, as though the heavens themselves press down. And there, at the center of it all, stands Atlas. His body towers, muscles strained, knees bent. But it's not the ground he holds, it's the sky. You tilt your head back, and even then, you can't see the full weight of what rests on his shoulders. Stars shimmer above, the dome of heaven itself curving endlessly, balanced on one man's back. Every breath he takes is labor, every movement a struggle. Atlas was a Titan, brother to Prometheus, a warrior who fought against Zeus during the Great Titanomachy, the war between Titans and Olympians. When the Titans lost, Zeus devised punishments for each. For Atlas, it was this, to stand at the edge of the world, holding up the heavens for all eternity. Here's your historical fact: the Greeks imagined the earth not as a globe, but as a flat disk surrounded by ocean, with the heavens as a solid dome above. Atlas wasn't holding a planet, as we picture on modern globes, but the very sky itself. Oddly enough, there's a quirky little twist in later art. By the Renaissance, Atlas was often redrawn as carrying the earth on his shoulders instead of the heavens. That misunderstanding turned into the iconic image we still see today on statues and maps. So when you picture him now, you're already blending myth with centuries of human imagination. Still, the punishment is relentless. You can feel his isolation, no laughter, no song, just the grinding weight of forever. His face is carved in sorrow, yet steady. He doesn't collapse, doesn't plead. He just endures. Scholars still argue whether Atlas was meant to symbolize the futility of defying the gods, or whether his image became something nobler, the eternal bearer, the one who shoulders what no one else can. In some ways, his punishment makes him strangely heroic, a figure of strength rather than failure. Not all his stories are stillness, though. In the tale of Heracles, Atlas steps briefly from his burden. Heracles, tasked with retrieving the golden apples of the Hesperides, comes to him for help. Atlas agrees to fetch them. After all, the tree belongs to his daughters, but only if Heracles holds the sky for a while. Imagine that, a mortal standing where Atlas stands, knees trembling under the heaven's weight. The quirky part? When Atlas returns, apples in hand, he tries to trick Heracles into keeping the burden forever. But Heracles, ever clever, asks Atlas to hold the sky just long enough for him to adjust his cloak. When Atlas takes it back, Heracles slips away with the fruit. Even Titans can be fooled. You stand beneath Atlas now, listening to the groan of the heavens shifting above. The stars tremble with each of his breaths. There's something haunting in the stillness, but also oddly comforting, a reminder that even in punishment, strength endures. And as you watch, a new form rises against the sky. Not burdened, not punished, but winged. He moves effortlessly where Atlas strains. Feathers glint in the twilight, and beside him, another pair of wings beats, smaller, more fragile. It's Daedalus and Icarus, climbing toward the sun. The stars fade into daylight, and the weight of the sky softens into air, clear and bright. You feel the wind tug at your hair, playful at first, then sharper, stronger. From a cliffside workshop you hear the scrape of tools, the creak of leather straps, the faint rustle of feathers. Daedalus is at work. He's no ordinary craftsman. Daedalus is the genius of Greece, a mortal whose hands can coax miracles from wood and wax. His inventions filled palaces, temples, and even prisons with cunning design. But brilliance often comes tangled with trouble, and here, his trouble is the island of Crete. King Minos once admired him, then imprisoned him, locking him in his own labyrinthine designs. Yet Daedalus refuses to remain caged. So, he creates wings, 2 sets, one for himself, one for his son Icarus. Feathers stitched with wax, flexible, strong. Not chains, not swords, but freedom bound to their shoulders. You can almost hear the father's voice, soft but firm, as he warns Icarus, do not fly too low, or the sea spray will weigh you down. Do not fly too high, or the sun will melt the wax. Stay steady, stay between. Here's your historical fact. The Greeks told Daedalus' story partly as a reflection of their own admiration for techne, the word they used for skill, art, and craft. It was the foundation of their culture, the spark behind ships, temples, and theaters. The wings lift. For a moment, you're weightless, following them into the air. The island falls away, cliffs shrinking, waves glittering like scales below. The sky opens, vast and intoxicating. Icarus laughs, the sound carrying on the wind, thrilled by the freedom. But youth rarely listens. The higher he climbs, the more he forgets. The sun glints on his feathers, dazzling. He wants more air, more height, more brilliance. His father calls out, but the wind swallows the words. You see it happen, the wax softens, feathers drift loose, and suddenly the air is no longer a friend. Icarus plummets. His wings unravel, scattering like broken dreams into the sea. The waves close over him, leaving only ripples where he fell. A quirky detail, ancient Greeks pointed to a specific patch of water south of Samos and called it the Icarian Sea, said to mark the boy's grave. Even in geography, his fall left a mark. Daedalus survives, heavy with grief, his genius intact but hollowed by loss. He becomes both celebrated and tragic, an inventor remembered not only for flight, but for its cost. Scholars still argue whether Icarus is meant as a warning against ambition or as a celebration of it. Was his fall a lesson in hubris, or was it simply the price of daring to touch the sky? His story refuses to settle, echoing both caution and longing. You hover for a moment in the quiet after his fall, the sea stretching endlessly below, the sun still hot on your shoulders. Ambition and restraint blur together here, as fragile as wax. And then, from the foam once more, a different shape rises, not wings this time, but scales. A monster coils in the deep, its many heads striking like lightning across the waves. The Hydra waits, and with it, the strength of Heracles. The sea darkens beneath you, rippling with unease. Something stirs below, vast, coiling, impossible to contain. Heads break the surface one by one, each with gleaming eyes and fangs dripping venom. This is the Lernaean Hydra, a beast bred of shadows and nightmares, its lair hidden in the swamps of Argolis. You hear the splash of oars, the creak of leather. Heracles approaches, oar in one hand, club in the other. This is his second labor, set by King Eurystheus, meant to be impossible. The Hydra isn't just dangerous, it's nearly unkillable. Cut off one head, and two more sprout in its place. A living riddle of multiplication. The battle begins. Heracles wades into the muck, striking fast. His club cracks skulls, but every blow leaves more heads snapping back. Venom sprays the air, sizzling as it hits the earth, toxic enough to scorch the ground itself. Here's your historical fact: the myth of Heracles was so iconic that his labors were depicted on pottery, temple carvings, and coins across Greece. Archaeologists still find images of him battling the Hydra, often with his club raised mid-swing. The story became shorthand for impossible struggle met with relentless force. But Heracles wasn't alone. His nephew Iolaus joined him, watching from the bank. He notices the pattern, the endless regrowth, and finds a solution. Each time Heracles severs a head, Iolaus rushes forward with a torch, searing the wound shut before new heads can sprout. Together, they turn the tide, flame answering venom. It's a brutal rhythm: strike, burn, strike, burn. At last, only the immortal central head remains, hissing louder than all the others. Heracles raises his club high, smashes it down, and buries the head under a heavy stone, trapping it forever in the earth. A quirky detail: after the battle, Heracles dips his arrows in the Hydra's blood, making them lethally poisonous. This choice ripples through later myths: his arrows would wound not just monsters, but also heroes, and even himself in the end. Victory carries seeds of tragedy, even for the strongest of mortals. Scholars still argue whether the Hydra is more than just a monster. Was it an allegory for human vices, multiplying if not burned out at the root? Or perhaps it represented the swamps of Lerna itself, a region plagued by disease and danger. Killing the Hydra, then, might symbolize taming a hostile landscape. The swamp quiets. Steam rises from the scorched ground, and the air smells of ash and blood. Heracles leans on his club, breathing heavy, while Iolaus watches the last ripples fade. And you, standing there, feel the stories you've walked through: the loves, the losses, the rebellions, the labors, begin to settle around you like a cloak. 15 tales carried on soft words and shifting scenes, each blending into the next. But the journey isn't quite over. Now it's time to slow down, to let the myths dim into dream, their echoes lingering as comfort rather than weight. The gods and heroes step back into shadow, leaving only stillness, breath, and the soft hum of night. The swamp mist thins, and the air softens. You leap behind Heracles and the Hydra, your footsteps lighter now, as if the stories themselves have been set gently back on their shelves. The battle's quiet, the voices fade, and only the night remains. You float above Greece, its coastline glowing faintly like a constellation of its own. The myths you've wandered through of gods, titans, heroes, and loves become distant embers, flickering like stars. They no longer roar or demand, but shimmer, whispering gently from far away. The sky stretches wide, and your breath slows with it. Clouds drift like feathers, and a cool breeze curls around you. Every inhale carries calm, every exhale releases weight you didn't realize you were holding. You are safe here, untouched by monsters, unburdened by trials. Just a dreamer, drifting quietly. One by one, the constellations arrange themselves above you: Orion, Perseus, Andromeda. Heroes turned into starlight, stories preserved not as battles, but as soft shapes glowing in the dark. The universe feels closer, yet kinder, like it's leaning down to hum a lullaby. You don't need to follow the myths anymore. You don't need to chase their endings. They've already folded themselves into the night sky, ready to keep watch while you sleep. So let your body sink deeper, like a stone into calm water. Let your thoughts loosen, like sand slipping through your fingers. The gods are quiet. The heroes rest. The monsters are gone. Only you remain warm, safe, and still. Good night, traveler. May your dreams be gentle, and may the stars keep their stories safe until you wake.